ways of understanding these hadiths, but I would certainly agree with you that they do go against the teachings of Islam. They're absolutely in contradiction to it. And in examining that particular hadith and the others which are linked to it, they go back basically to the occasion where the Prophet was speaking to the women in his congregation after a celebration of Eid. And it's an example in my mind of the humour that the Prophet had when dealing with his audiences. A lot of people think the Prophet should have been a man of gravitas who never had humour. But in my study of the hadiths and the life of the Prophet, he shows over and over again how he did have quite a tickly sense of wit that made people sort of think twice and made them laugh. And this particular hadith, to me, would come in that category, because he's walking back through the congregation, he's past the men, he's leaning on the arm of Bilal, who's holding out his cloak to collect the contributions for charity. And the women are sort of slow to put their stuff in. And so straight away, I've looked at, be more generous. I've looked into hell and I noticed there were more women than men in hell. Now, sometimes when the scholars, they just read that part of the hadith and they don't give you the rest of the story. And if you read the full version, one of the women in the congregation immediately jumps up, speaks to the Prophet face to face. What do you mean? Why are you saying this? And he said to her straight, well, you women are so ungrateful, you always curse your husbands. Even if the poor men spend a lifetime doing good for you, you still find something to criticise them about. And it made everybody laugh. And at that point, the women began to pull off their bangles and their earrings and throw them into Bilal's cloak that it was held out for them. So when you see the full thing, I doubt very much whether the Prophet really meant there were more women than men in hell. I think it was one of his jokes. And if you read the full hadith, that's crystal clear. And of course, it's not crystal clear to people who don't have access to the full context of that text. And then in some versions of this particular hadith, it goes on where the Prophet criticises the women, you're below us in intelligence and your faith is lacking. And the same woman comes at him again, straight away, what do you mean? How can you explain this? And he brings up the question of the woman having two women to give a witness. And that was a pure indication of their lacking in intelligence. And the fact that their faith was deficient was because they were excused prayers during fasting, during their time of menstruation. They didn't have to fast or to pray. But my point is, again, I would take that the Prophet in a way was jesting with them, because I cannot accept a hadith that goes completely against the teaching of the Quran. And to me, the women, the fact that they were excused prayer and fasting during their menstruation is not a weakness in their faith whatsoever. It was a God-given concession that was granted to them by the specific words of the Quran, not a weakness at all. And when they checked that out later with Aisha, she said, well, this was the Prophet's order. You can make up the fasts before the next Ramadan, you don't have to make up the prayers. So both Allah himself and the Prophet, that was their specific order. And then as regards the witnesses, when I looked into that, I found that of all the passages in the Quran that mention witnessing, there's only one that requires the witness of two women. Every other passage in the Quran, and there are many, maybe 15 or 16, the woman's witness is the same as the man's. And the wording of the Quran, when it says man, it refers to man and woman. And these verses that talk about witness come under that category, all of them. The only exception is this one where the woman is being asked to witness some kind of document, legal document, which very often would be something to do with property or inheritance or something, where, as we found often to our cost, the person who's going to cheat you and put you, diddle you out of what is rightfully yours, is somebody that it's very difficult for you to speak out against, i.e. your own husband or your own boss. And in those cases, the Quran itself gives the woman the very, very sensible safeguard. Have another witness, another woman witness or another witness, and then, if it comes to unpleasant disagreement later on when things aren't quite so cheerful, you have that extra witness there. If it's not contract law, it's nothing to do with that, then a woman's witness is exactly the same as a man's and just as acceptable. important to use modern technology and modern equipment to make sure that the Muslim community is properly educated. I think the vast majority of Muslims don't speak Arabic, so they're at a disadvantage straight away. If you learn Arabic, they tend to sort of learn enough to recite the Quran, but they don't actually learn enough to read the technical books and get the full picture. And it's very important, I mean, it's perfectly accessible now through the internet and through other sources to get the full context, the full place where the hadith comes from. The hadith itself is Sahih. The Prophet did say that. But what is wrong is how generations of people without any kind of background knowledge have misinterpreted it and not realised what the Prophet actually meant. I mean, I'd like to sort of underline this by one famous hadith where the Prophet turned round to Ayman, who is the only human being who actually knew the Prophet from his first breath, he was born into her hands, to his last, she was in the room as he died, his adopted mother, Ayman, and he told her there would be no old women in paradise. That is a Sahih hadith. I'm an old woman. Does it mean I won't go to paradise? Poor Ayman burst into tears until she realised what the Prophet actually meant. Taking it out of its context, you could so easily make a mistake. It meant that in paradise we will all be recreated afresh in forms that we do not know. Be misled into sectarianism, because it's all too easy to be taught by one particular sheikh, one particular group, and think that is it, that is Islam. And every particular group, they think they have the answer and everybody else is wrong. Now, I've run into this a lot as I've studied and toured around in Islam. But once you can put a label on yourself which isn't Muslim, then you're really identifying with that sect or that group and not with Islam as such. So you see, you might have a Wahhabi, the Wahhabis are right, everybody else is wrong. They won't give 2 seconds to a Sufi, but to try and get a Sufi to marry a Wahhabi would be a nightmare. But just as in the church that I came from, there are so many different types, all worshipping God in their different ways, some of them with tambourines, some of them quietly, so this, that and the other. In Islam, you get many, many different types of Muslim. You have to come to what is common. They're all worshipping God. They all want to please God. But you don't please God by condemning everybody else of being kufar. You have to think these are all for God to judge. If I judge these people, I'm committing shirk. I don't know which is right or wrong. If the Prophet himself could say to a prostitute that she would attain paradise, then it's no good for a Wahhabi to turn around and say to a Naqshbandi woman that she's not going to paradise for whatever reason. You have to keep this open mind and seek the will of Allah from the original source, which is the Quran.